2 of our 30 days of PM series, where we are looking at product management, product management content, and trying to learn and get better. I'm Shagun. I'm a PM during the day, and I'm just learning more about product management and how to scale further. In this series, we are following the 30 days of PM challenge from crew work and looking at the resource and content and making ourselves equipped with more knowledge on the product management and the product manager field and role and how that goes. So, for today, as you can see, we are looking at a few myths about product management and what a product manager actually does. And I'll also try to add nuances as to how my typical day looks like as a PM and what goes on during a day, and if there are other myths to be busted here. Myth number one: a PM role is well defined. Not really. This is true. A lot of people think a PM, all they do is just sit in meetings and make decisions and tell people to do stuff. But a lot of things change when you move as a PM between organizations and the type of product you're building. Yesterday in our last live stream, we also looked at how a product manager's role or job changes organization based on the organization, based on the role, based on the stage of the company, based on the type of product, the industry that you're working in, and the segment. Because all products are not the same, they cater to a different audience, they cater to a different set of users, and all of them have different requirements. The simplest example would be B2B and B2C. In the B2C space, you don't see a lot of social media apps, for example. There are a handful of those, probably five or six major ones that are used worldwide. But when it comes to CRM in the B2B space, to manage content and resources, you have like 500 or thousands of these B2B CRM applications that essentially do the same thing, but they have a few nuanced differentiations in terms of their features and how they work, which cater to a different set of users and audience. So that is how things work, and that is how the PM role changes. So it's not well defined, it's very obscure. It changes. There are essentially the same set of things that you do, but the details change drastically when you move or switch organizations. You are responsible for the product, you write stories, you write PRD documents, talk to customers, but the product or the source of what you're trying to build might change, and the way you build it might also change based on the size and all these other factors that come into play. The next one is PMs are mini CEOs of the product. Not really. I mean, it's a very common occurrence where people describe product managers to be the CEO of the product. In some ways, they are, because they make a lot of decisions and they say yes or no to a lot of questions that are raised around the product by various stakeholders. Can be sales, can be the customer themselves. But if this is a myth, so let's see what they've written. Product managers simply don't have direct authority. Yes, I mean, essentially, if you are a mini CEO, why don't you, I mean, why does the CEO not just do your job and make all the calls? You still have business interest and business stakeholders and requirements and deadlines to meet that need to align with the business values, and you are not the only one calling all the shots. There are multiple pieces and things involved that need to be taken care, and that is why PMs being called mini CEOs is not really thing, because the first line tells it, right? You can be an IC or you can be a people manager. People management skills are important, communication is important, but you can just starting out, you can probably just be a IC working under a GPM or a director of PM, solving for specific requirements or specific features and working on them. Yeah, does not have direct authority. Even most do not have hiring or firing controls and direct reports, and that doesn't really sound like a CEO. You are a CEO when it comes to a few decisions, but not all of them. Next is PMs do the managing, others do the work. In some ways, yes, you are managing people because you're not the one developing the feature. Engineering is doing that. So you are making sure people are aligned in terms of the timelines and the deadlines to meet. And you are the person managing the communication between all the stakeholders, the customer, the internal stakeholders, uh, so on and so forth. But yeah, PMs are essentially also doing their own work because you have to look at competition, you have to write product requirements, you're looking at what next to build as part of your roadmap, which might increase the average GMV and the net dollar contract rate that probably your product has, or how you could monetize a specific feature that can generate more revenue for your product and your organization. So yeah, PMs, not just managing is part of the job, but it's not the only thing that a PM does. You have a project manager to do that for you, where they are looking at specific areas that needs to be built and aligning all the resources appropriately to deliver it based on the timelines that have been committed. But yeah, in most organizations, a PM is needed to demonstrate different personalities at different times: aggressive, defensive, data versus leap of faith. Yeah, that's true. It cannot always just be managing. It cannot always just be looking at a feature and telling yes we should build it or no we should not. There is a lot of reasoning involved as to why you made a specific decision, and a lot of time is spent by PMs in working out those details that not a lot of stakeholders see. It's essentially a one man job, or the PM team looking at a few details as to what they want to build and structure. But yeah, that is how things go. Myth number 4: product management is all about building products. No, not really. It's about building those relationships, it's about building those connections, um, and influencing a lot of the times is into play. A lot of decision making when it comes to what to build, what not to build. But yeah, it's not all about building products. It's also about sales, about marketing, and all these other things. While building is certainly a vital aspect of, it's not the only one. True, any part of any product while being built goes through a process which can be divided into parts: problem and solution phase. Right. The problem phase is when you're trying to identify and understand and get a grasp of the problem, and the solution phase is just looking at potential ways you can do. A lot of the times during the solution phase, you have some idea in your mind and you get stuck to it. A lot of the times that ends up hampering the product, and as it scales or as it matures and grows during its life cycle. But yeah, that's a key insight, that whenever building solutions, always take a step back and think, are there other ways or better ways to do it? And if not, just try to have a conversation with your colleagues and peers as to what are options. You might not have this chance because everyone's busy in their own work. But yeah, if you get a chance, talk to peers, get feedback, and see how you can iterate on the solution phase, for example. Yep. So yeah, that's the problem phase. The solution phase, a good product manager needs to understand the market, understand customer, make decisions based on data or by gut. If they don't have the data available to them. But yeah, a lot of times it's a mix of a lot of things, but it's not just only focusing yourself on building the product. It's much more than that. Myth number 5: is responsible for coming up with ideas. They are. It's a creative job. It's art plus science. It's not totally science. There is a little bit of art involved, and depends on person to person on how they look at a solution. A lot of times it's also driven by insight, by talking to your customers, where you, if you have a few insights on a few features that you want to add to the product, But when you talk to these customers, they probably divert you to explore a different way altogether of doing it, or a better way that can help you. uh, the idea and the insight is more important, and from there it goes and flows. There are multiple iterations and multiple cycles of just refining the requirements of what you're trying to build, getting approvals, getting all the stakeholders involved, and convincing them of making this change is actually going to help and scale and help grow the business and the product. But yeah, as mentioned in the point, the two phases of the process of building a product, the solution phase starts with ideation and is more a team activity than the responsibility of the product. Good ideas can come from anywhere. Yes, exactly as I told. It can come from your customers, just looking at insights online, looking at competitors. It doesn't really have like a definite source that the idea has to come from a product manager, or it has to come through the product manager. But yeah, they're not really the only people responsible. It can come from engineering as a suggestion, it can come from QA, a way to optimize things. So and you are responsible of then taking it up, refining it, combining it with other features that you have on your mind, and building the solution from there. Yep. Let's see what's next. Product management is only for technical people. mm, in some ways it is, in not always. uh, you don't have to be very good at product management unless the product you're building is technical and caters to a technical audience, or examples being developers, or deals with a lot of APIs or backend data modeling, visualization, and all of that. But yeah, not necessarily, it's not a prerequisite for you that a PM is only for technical people. It helps having knowledge of how things work behind the scenes, how databases work, how, I mean, authentication works, and things like that. But it's not the end of the world if you don't have the technical know-how of how things work behind the scenes. But eventually, you will need those skills, and they help a lot in getting things done and delivered. The role of the PM is very contextual, and the need of knowing technologies varies with the role. Exactly. In a startup that makes dev tools with only developers, yep. But a PM in a consumer startup who has user behavior is very analytical. Yep. It depends. Not the best answer, but yeah, it depends a lot of the time based on the organization or the project you're building. If it's a consumer app, not necessarily required. If it's an e-commerce site, you need the data, ability to manage and analyze the data, analyze traffic, and generate insights out of those, and how that works. But that's not necessarily very on the very technical side of things. Whereas to looking at API endpoints, figuring out the right API endpoints to call to receive a certain set of data, or the right sort of webhook approach to take, and when to take a webhook versus an API approach to things of these sort, that are more engineering, interaction driven, is what helps there. But yeah, a basic definitely is needed. You need to at least understand how websites work, how the HTTPS protocol works, what is DNS, just the basics. Should get help you get along, because you're not necessarily the one developing or writing code in Java or Python to build that application. A PM job is done once the product is launched. Not really. I think a lot of times it begins when the product is launched, because you are essentially, I mean, the requirement and the solution phase that you worked earlier to build that feature or product is gone, is live now. But you also need to now look at how customers start using it, how they can adopt the feature, how they can leverage the feature as part of their workflows and grow. Because just building features does not generate revenue. The feature actually has to be useful and provide some value to the end customer, because otherwise it's just wastage of everyone's time. It's uh, and you probably not doing a better job, where all the stakeholders involved poured in hundreds of hours of work just for it to be built and not be used by any of the customers and not generating enough revenue. So a lot of times it's a lot of thinking of the end at the beginning itself and making assumptions and making judgments and calls as to how things might be perceived once they are launched. I think Amazon has this thing where before building any product, you write the press release of how the product would be published and marketed and announced to the audience and the users, and then you build from there. So you have the end outcome and the end goal of the press release being out, but you start from there and come back and work backwards essentially to looking at the solution and the problem and how that can be built better, so that after spending a lot of resources, the product comes out and generates the value it was supposed to, and not fail or not. It's not as simple as just writing something on a piece of paper and making it live. It's talking to stakeholders. A lot of feedback loops are involved. A lot of time is being spent after a product is launched so that it is adopted, made use of, is known, because a product being great does not do the job. You still have to market it to make it visible and known to a lot of your target audience so that they start using it. So yeah, that's another myth. Product managers only work in software companies. Not really. I think, as we talked in our previous stream, that PMs as a job uh, essentially originated in the FMCG space or the consumer goods market, and then it essentially flowed into the technology space. But yeah, it's not limited to software, um, but it's not even, not really part of like investment banking. You are not a product manager there, you're not building something, you're managing money. But yeah, it's not just limited to software, it can be a lot of other tech as well. It's essentially, as the it mentions here, product manager's real job is to be a problem solver, and it can be in hardware where you're trying to build a robot or trying to build something, a new sort of a router, a new technology and a new chip. uh, you need skills on how you can build a product better. For example, building an iPhone um, has multiple teams, multiple stakeholders looking at specific features, and it's also on the hardware side as much as it is on the software side of how things get together and work seamlessly. So yeah, it's not just software, it's also hardware, it's consumer goods, as we talked, is where it originated from. Myth number 9: being a PM is easy. It is easy when you compare it to the job of a CEO. You certainly don't have all the other things on your plate when it comes to talking to investors. You do talk to when you get to senior levels, but yeah, a lot of the hiring, a lot of the budgeting, a lot of the sales is not really your, I mean, job role. You do interact with a lot of these teams, but essentially you are here to build the product, and it's not really easy if you are, for example, trying to build a new product and trying to join a new category, or join, for example, let's take AI, which is like the hot thing. You need there are multiple chat GPT wrappers, but for you to stand out, you have to have something unique, and just being unique does not solve. You have to build it first, and to build it you need to find the resources. Once it is built, you now need to make sure it's launched, and once it's launched, it's actually being used by customers, and you have customers actually interested in it. And from there the loop starts, where if you have a few interested customers, you then scale and grow the product from there, and look at user feedback and generate loops, iterate on that, build an MVP, get started from there, and probably build a software or a hardware sort of company. It's not really easy when it comes to decision making. It's easy in terms of you not having to spend a lot of the time into doing quants, for example, or a lot of number crunching. it's not just number crunching, there are other elements. It's very tough because of the context switching that you have to do, dealing with multiple stakeholders from multiple backgrounds, talking to customer during the day and talking to engineering during the night, and working with business and sales to also define. So a lot of context switching is involved. Your plate is never empty, you always have things to do, and it only keeps growing. It There is no such thing as a zero backlog. You will always have items on the plate that need to be taken up. Some It will never be empty. Your to-do list, it always keeps growing, and you need to find a way to manage it and make the best out of it, such that all the other stakeholders that you work with on a day-to-day basis are happy, and you get them and you keep them happy and keep growing from there. So it's not really that easy of a job. It is easy when you compare it. For example, you don't have a lot of technical sort of things to do, don't have to figure out how to build this database to manage all this. Engineering is there to handle that and help you on that. But you are essentially looking at the best way to empower all these other teams to make and generate shareholder value in ways. But yeah, I think this was a good set of myths. I think we covered all of these. And yeah, I think I've covered other pointers here. The other thing I would probably add as part of a myth of a PM's role is people think that all we do is talk and just schedule meetings. I mean, it's a very glamorous field when you think about it. Everyone's talking about PM, being a PM, and trying to become a PM. But when you step into a PM's shoes, it's much harder from there on. You don't have, it's very hard to have the balance in terms of your work and life. And how do you manage that? Because your customers might be in a different time zone altogether, and you're having to attend meetings and working on products and deliveries that are due at the end of the day or have commits to meet, and are also involved in talking to other representatives, looking at partnerships that can help uh, other vendors and you. So yeah, there are a lot of things involved. It's if you love the dynamic nature of the job and don't really like to do just the same task every day, for example, just clicking buttons and testing if they are working, it's an interesting job that always keeps you thinking and keeps you uh, going, in terms of you need to build something that actually brings value, and you are at the forefront of receiving criticism or praise. When it comes to mostly criticism and feedback, but there are instances of that praise that helps you keep going from there. But yeah, I think these are the myths of what a product manager does, and the reality of things from a real PM working in the B2B space. But yeah, I think that's all for today. I think we'll look for day 3 of 30 days of PM, and we'll see where it takes us. But yeah, in the first day, we learned about what is a PM. The second day, we're learning about myths and the actual things involved of what a PM really does in their day-to-day job. But yeah, thank you for sticking around. And this live stream will be available, and I'll probably edit and make cuts. But yeah, see you soon. See you tomorrow.